Chapter 1. When the forest holds its breath, in the high desert of northeastern Arizona, where ancient pines reach towards star-drunk skies, there exists a place where time itself seems to pause. The year was 1975, and the world was spinning through Cold War tensions, Watergate revelations, and the dying echoes of the Vietnam conflict. Yet in these remote mountains, 7 men were about to witness something that would challenge everything humanity believed about its place in the universe. The Mogollon Rim stretches like a geological scar across Arizona's wilderness, its forests thick with Douglas fir and ponderosa pine. Here, where elevation meets isolation, logging crews worked in rhythms as old as the trees themselves. The work was honest, brutal, and simple: cut timber, load trucks, drive home before darkness swallowed the mountain roads. On November 5th, as twilight painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, a crew of 7 loggers finished another day of cutting timber in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. These were men of the earth-calloused hands, flannel shirts, boots caked with sawdust and pine sap. They knew these forests like old lovers, every trail, every clearing, every shadow that fell differently when the sun began its descent. Mike Rogers, 31 and weathered by years of outdoor work, guided his crew truck along the winding Forest Service road. Behind him sat 6 men who would soon become unwilling witnesses to the impossible. Travis Walton, 22, and restless with youth. Dwayne Smith, whose steady demeanor had earned him respect among his peers. Ken Peterson, Alan Dallas, Steve Pierce, and John Goulet, carrying the quiet dignity of men who earned their living from the land. The truck's headlights carved tunnels through the gathering dusk as they wound through stands of timber that had witnessed centuries pass in silence. The air held that particular crispness of high-altitude autumn, sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine resin and approaching winter. These were the moments between day and night when the veil between worlds grows thin, when the ordinary begins to whisper of extraordinary possibilities. What they didn't know, as they joked and talked about plans for the weekend, was that their lives were about to divide into 2 distinct chapters, before and after. Before they saw what no human should see, after they carried a secret that would burden them for decades. But perhaps the forest already knew. Perhaps the trees, ancient witnesses to countless mysteries, had been holding their breath all day, waiting for nightfall to reveal what daylight keeps hidden. For in these mountains, where government agencies test classified aircraft and where Native American legends speak of star people who once walked among earthbound tribes, the boundary between myth and reality has always been perilously thin. What force draws the unknown to such remote places, and why, on this particular evening, would 7 ordinary men find themselves at the center of one of history's most documented encounters with the impossible? Chapter 2. The light that shouldn't exist. The first sign that something was wrong came not as a sight, but as a feeling. Mike Rogers noticed at first a strange pressure in his chest, as if the air itself had grown thick and electric. The truck's radio, which had been crackling with country music from a Flagstaff station, suddenly filled with static, then went silent entirely. "You hear that?" Dwayne Smith leaned forward from the back seat, his voice carrying an edge of unease. They all heard it then, or rather, they felt it. A low-frequency hum that seemed to vibrate through their bones rather than their ears. It was the sound of power, of energy barely contained, unlike anything the forest should produce. The truck's engine began to sputter, though Rogers had maintained it meticulously. Even the familiar creak of the suspension seemed muted, as if sound itself was being absorbed by something unseen. Then they saw the light, dotted, began as a glow filtering through the pine boughs ahead. Too bright and too steady to be a campfire, too isolated to be from any human settlement. As they rounded a bend in the forest road, the source became visible, and 7 men felt their understanding of reality crack like ice under sudden weight, hovering above a clearing. Approximately 100 yards ahead was an object that belonged in no earthly sky. It was disc-shaped, roughly 40 feet in diameter, suspended 20 feet above the forest floor with an impossible stillness. The craft, for lack of any other word that might describe it, emitted a golden luminescence that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, casting shadows that danced and shifted in ways that defied the laws of light and physics. The surface appeared metallic, yet it seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously, creating an optical illusion that hurt the eyes to look upon directly. Along its circumference, smaller lights rotated in a slow, hypnotic pattern, each one a different hue, blue, green, amber like jewels set in impossible geometry. Rogers brought the truck to a stop, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. The engine died on its own, leaving them in silence broken only by that omnipresent hum and the sound of 7 men, breathing hard in the sudden stillness. "Jesus Christ," Peterson whispered, his voice barely audible. "What the hell is that thing?" No one answered because no one had an answer. In 1975, even the most vivid science fiction films couldn't have prepared them for this reality. This was no weather balloon, no experimental aircraft, no trick of marsh gas or reflected light. This was a technology beyond their comprehension, a presence from beyond their world, hovering in their forest as if it belonged there. Travis Walton, youngest of the crew, felt something stir deep in his chest, not fear, though that was present too, but something else. Curiosity, wonder, a magnetic pull that seemed to draw him toward the impossible. Light dot, was this moment inevitable, written in the stars above the Arizona mountains? Or was it pure chance that brought 7 witnesses to this clearing, to this craft, to this threshold between worlds? Chapter 3. The moment everything changed for what felt like an eternity but was likely only minutes. The 7 men sat transfixed in their truck, watching the craft hover in perfect silence above the clearing. The air around them felt charged, similar to the atmosphere just before a thunderstorm, but amplified beyond anything nature could produce. Even their clothing seemed to crackle with static electricity. The craft continued its slow rotation, its lights pulsing in patterns that suggested intelligence, purpose, communication. Some of the crew later described feeling as though they were being observed, studied, evaluated by an intelligence vast and alien. Others spoke of an overwhelming sense of reverence, as if they were witnessing something sacred. But Travis Walton felt something else entirely, an irresistible compulsion to get closer. Without warning, he pushed open the truck's passenger door and stepped out onto the forest floor. The sound seemed to shatter the silence like glass breaking, and his 6 companions erupted in urgent whispers of protest. "Travis, get back in here. Don't go out there, man. Are you crazy?" But Walton was already walking toward the craft, his boots crunching softly on pine needles and fallen leaves. Later, he would struggle to explain what drove him forward, not recklessness, not bravery, but something deeper. A recognition, perhaps, a sense that this moment had been waiting for him all his life. As he approached the clearing, the humming grew louder, more intense, until it seemed to resonate in every cell of his body. The craft's glow intensified, and for a moment, Travis felt as though he was walking through liquid light, each step carrying him deeper into a realm where the normal laws of physics held no dominion. He stopped, roughly 30 feet from the hovering disk, tilting his head back to take in its full presence. This close, he could see details that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The seamless construction that showed no bolts, no welds, no evidence of earthly manufacturing. The way the light seemed to emerge from within the metal itself. The absolute perfection of its engineering. Then, without warning, the craft tilted slightly in his direction, and a beam of blue-white energy erupted from its underside, striking Travis squarely in the chest. The impact was unlike anything in human experience. Not painful, exactly, but overwhelming. Travis felt his consciousness explode outward, his sense of self scattered like leaves in a hurricane. His body lifted from the ground, arms and legs splaying as electricity seemed to course through every nerve ending. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously, and for a moment that lasted forever, he existed in a space between spaces, neither fully human nor something else entirely. His 6 companions watched in horror as their friend was lifted 10 feet into the air, suspended in the blue beam like an insect in amber. His body arched in what appeared to be either ecstasy or agony. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the beam cut off, and Travis collapsed to the forest floor, motionless. Mike Rogers gunned the truck's engine, which miraculously started, and the 6 men fled into the night, leaving their friend behind in the clearing with the impossible craft. In their panic and terror, they made the hardest decision of their lives, to save themselves and pray that Travis could somehow survive whatever was happening to him. But when they returned 20 minutes later with reinforcements from town, both Travis and the craft had vanished, leaving only the scent of ozone and a circular patch of disturbed earth where something had once touched. What happened to Travis Walton in those moments of blue light? And why, in a universe of infinite possibilities, had this particular young man been chosen for an experience that would challenge everything humanity believed about its place among the stars? Chapter 4. The search begins when the 6 remaining lagers burst into the Navajo County Sheriff's Office in Holbrook, Arizona, at 10:30 p.m. on November 5, 1975. They were pale, shaking, and barely coherent. Deputy Chuck Ellison, working the night shift, initially thought they were victims of some kind of industrial accident, or perhaps a bear attack. The idea that they were reporting an alien abduction hadn't even crossed his mind. Such things happened in science fiction, not in rural Arizona. "Slow down," Ellison told Mike Rogers, who was stammering about lights and missing friends and things that shouldn't exist. "Start from the beginning. What happened to your man?" The story that emerged sounded like madness, but Ellison was struck by several factors that gave him pause. First, all 6 men told identical stories, down to minute details. Their fear was genuine. These were tough, practical men who earned their living in dangerous conditions, yet they were visibly traumatized by whatever they had witnessed. Second, none of them appeared to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Third, Travis Walton was genuinely missing. Sheriff Marlin Gillespie was called from his home, and by midnight, a search and rescue operation was underway. The Arizona Department of Public Safety deployed helicopters equipped with searchlights, while volunteers from Snowflake, Holbrook, and surrounding communities organized ground teams. The Forest Service opened restricted logging roads, and even aircraft from nearby military installations joined the search. What they found in the clearing only deepened the mystery. The search teams discovered a circular area approximately 15 feet in diameter where the forest floor appeared to have been somehow compressed or altered. Pine needles in this area seemed fused together, and several searchers noted an unusual metallic smell in the air. A Geiger counter brought by an overzealous volunteer registered slightly elevated radiation levels. Though these readings were dismissed as equipment malfunction, more disturbing were the reports from the search dogs. 3 separate canine units lost Travis's scent at the edge of the circular area, as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The dogs became agitated and confused, whining and pawing at the ground before their handlers pulled them away. As news of the disappearance spread, it quickly attracted attention far beyond rural Arizona. The National Enquirer offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to Travis's discovery. UFO researchers from the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization descended on the area with electromagnetic detection equipment and cameras. Even officials from Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, headquarters of the Strategic Air Command, made discreet inquiries about the incident. But the most intense scrutiny fell on the 6 remaining loggers. As days passed without finding Travis, suspicion began to grow that perhaps the UFO story was an elaborate cover-up for something more mundane and sinister. Had there been an argument that turned violent? An accident that required concealment? The polygraph tests administered to the crew yielded inconclusive results, with 5 men passing cleanly and 1 result labeled as inconclusive due to emotional stress. The investigation was further complicated by the region's unique geography and history. The Apache Sitgreaves National Forest bordered several military installations where classified aircraft testing was known to occur. The nearby Pinnacastle Electronic Warfare Range was used for training missions involving experimental technology. Was it possible that Travis had been accidentally struck by some kind of energy weapon during a secret military test? Government agencies neither confirmed nor denied such possibilities, maintaining the same wall of silence that had surrounded so many unexplained aerial phenomena during the height of the Cold War. The FBI opened a file on the case, but classified its contents. The Air Force's Project Blue Book, officially terminated in 1969, somehow produced a report declaring the incident a hoax without conducting any on-scene investigation. As the 5th day of searching dawned with no sign of Travis Walton, the authorities began to consider the possibility that they might never see him alive again. The forest had swallowed him as completely as if he had never existed, leaving behind only questions, theories, and 6 men whose lives would never be the same, in a wilderness where military secrets and ancient mysteries intersect. What forces might have been at play on that November night? And if Travis Walton had truly encountered something from beyond our world, what was happening to him in the hours and days while searchers combed the forest below? Chapter 5. 5 days of silence while hundreds of searchers combed the Arizona wilderness. Travis Walton existed in a reality that human language struggles to describe. His memories of those 5 missing days would return in fragments, like pieces of a shattered mirror that reflected impossible truths. He first became aware of consciousness as a gradual awakening from dreams within dreams. There was no sense of time passing, no awareness of breathing or heartbeat, only a slow emergence from darkness into a dim, diffused light that seemed to have no source. The air, if it could be called air, felt thick and oxygenated, but somehow artificial, as if it had been manufactured rather than breathed by living things. The room, though room was inadequate to describe, it curved in ways that hurt to contemplate, The walls appeared to be made of a material that was simultaneously metallic and organic, smooth as silk, yet visibly alive with subtle currents of energy that flowed like blood through invisible veins. There were no angles, no corners, no straight lines. Everything curved and flowed in geometries that earth-based architecture had never conceived. As consciousness returned more fully, Travis became aware that he was lying on what could only be described as a table, though it conformed to his body in ways that suggested it had somehow molded itself to his specific dimensions. The surface felt warm, almost body temperature, and seemed to pulse gently with a rhythm that almost matched his heartbeat above him. Suspended from the curved ceiling hung instruments that defied description. They appeared to be made of the same living metal as the walls, but their purpose remained completely unclear. Some resembled medical devices, though their design was so alien that their function could only be guessed at. Others seemed to be recording or monitoring equipment, their surfaces covered with symbols that hurt the mind to look at directly. But it was when he tried to sit up that Travis encountered his first glimpse of his captors. They emerged from the shadows at the periphery of his vision. 3 figures that moved with a fluid grace unlike anything human. They stood approximately 4.5 feet tall, with proportions that were almost human but somehow fundamentally wrong. Their heads were too large for their delicate frames, shaped like inverted teardrops with enormous dark eyes that seemed to contain depths beyond measurement. Their skin, if it was skin, had a greyish pallor with an almost translucent quality, as if lit from within by some internal luminescence. They had no hair, no visible ears, only small slits where a nose should be, and mouths that were barely more than lines in their faces. They wore no clothing that Travis could identify, yet their bodies seemed covered by some kind of form-fitting material that might have been clothing or might have been their actual skin. What struck him most profoundly was their eyes. They were entirely black, with no visible pupils or iris, yet they conveyed intelligence, purpose, and something else, a kind of ancient sadness, as if these beings had seen civilizations rise and fall across countless worlds. When they looked at him, Travis felt exposed in ways that went beyond the physical, as if they could read not just his thoughts, but the very essence of what made him human. They moved around him with clinical precision, their actions coordinated in ways that suggested either telepathic communication or a hive-mind consciousness. When they touched him, their fingers were cool and dry, with a texture like fine leather. Their touch was gentle but completely alien, lacking any warmth or emotional connection that a human touch might convey. Travis tried to speak, to ask questions, to demand explanations, but found that his vocal cords seemed paralyzed. Whether this was due to fear, some kind of sedation, or an intentional suppression of his ability to communicate, he never knew. He could only watch and try to comprehend what was happening to him. The beings seemed to be conducting some kind of examination, though their instruments and methods bore no resemblance to human medical procedures. They passed devices over his body that hummed with energy, causing sensations that ranged from mild tingling to complete numbness. They collected samples of hair, skin, and what might have been saliva, storing them in containers that appeared to grow from the walls themselves when needed. Throughout this process, Travis felt no pain, but also no comfort. The beings treated him not cruelly, but with the same detached professionalism that a scientist might show toward a laboratory specimen. He was not a person to them, not an individual with thoughts and fears and dreams, but simply an example of his species, something to be studied and catalogued and perhaps understood. Time had no meaning in this place. The examination might have lasted minutes or hours or days. The light never changed, the temperature never varied, and Travis felt neither hunger nor thirst nor the need for sleep. He existed in a suspended state between consciousness and unconsciousness, aware but not fully present, observed but not acknowledged as a sentient being. And always, those enormous black eyes watched him, taking in every detail, every reaction, every involuntary response, what they thought of what they saw, what conclusions they drew about humanity from their examination of one frightened young logger, remained forever beyond his ability to know what intelligence guided those alien hands, and what knowledge did they seek in their examination of a human subject. Were they explorers, scientists, or something else, entirely beings with motivations so alien that human minds could never truly comprehend their purpose? Chapter 6. The Chamber of Stars. As to an indeterminate period under examination, Travis became aware of a change in the atmosphere around him. The beings that had been studying him withdrew into the shadows, and he found himself able to move freely for the first time since his capture. His limbs felt weak but functional, as if he had been unconscious for a long time but was gradually regaining his strength. The room where he had been examined opened, though he saw no door. The wall simply became permeable, like walking through water made solid. Beyond lay a corridor that curved away in both directions, its walls alive with the same flowing energy patterns he had observed in the examination room. The ceiling was higher here, designed for beings taller than his captors, and the scale of the architecture suggested that this vessel, for he had no doubt now that he was aboard some kind of spacecraft, was far larger than he had initially imagined. Travis chose a direction at random and began walking, his bare feet silent on the smooth floor. The corridor was lined with what might have been doorways, though they appeared to be sealed or inactive. Through translucent sections in the walls, he caught glimpses of other chambers, some containing equipment whose purpose he couldn't begin to guess, others that seemed to be filled with a luminous gas or fluid. The corridor eventually opened into a vast chamber that took his breath away. The space was enormous, easily the size of a cathedral, with a domed ceiling that seemed to stretch impossibly high above his head. But it was not the size of the chamber that left him stunned. It was what filled it. The walls, if they could be called walls, were transparent, offering a view that no human had ever seen. Beyond the clear barrier lay space itself, not the space visible from Earth, filtered through atmosphere and distorted by distance, but the raw, unfiltered cosmos in all its terrible beauty. Stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, closer and more vivid than anything visible from his homeworld. Nebulae painted the darkness in shades of color for which human language had no names. Distant galaxies spiraled in their cosmic dance, and through it all, the infinite depth of space stretched away toward horizons that might have been measured in millions of light-years. In the center of this observatory stood what could only be described as a control station, though its design was so alien that Travis could only guess at its function. The console, if that's what it was, appeared to be grown rather than built, its surface covered with symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. Above it, suspended in the air without visible support, hung a three-dimensional display that showed star charts and navigational data in formats that human science was still centuries away from developing. But it was not until he approached the console that Travis realized he was not alone in the chamber. Figures stepped from behind one of the control pedestals taller than the grey beings who had examined him, more human in proportions, yet still clearly not of Earth. This being stood nearly 6 feet tall, with pale golden skin and features that were almost beautiful in their alien perfection. Its eyes were large, but not the endless black of its companions. Instead, they held depths of blue-green that reminded Travis somehow of deep ocean water. The being wore what appeared to be clothing, a form-fitting suit of some material that shimmered with its own internal light. Unlike the grey creatures, this being radiated something that Travis could only identify as warmth. Not physical warmth, but something deeper, more fundamental. When it looked at him, Travis felt acknowledged for the first time since his abduction, seen as an individual rather than merely a specimen. The being gestured toward the stellar display, and Travis understood that he was being offered something unprecedented, a glimpse of the universe from the perspective of those who traveled between its stars. The display shifted, showing Earth as a tiny blue dot in an ocean of darkness, then zooming out to show the solar system, the local star group, the galaxy itself. The scale was overwhelming, humbling, magnificent in its implications. Through some means he could not understand, not words, not telepathy, but something deeper than both, Travis began to receive impressions, fragments of knowledge about the beings who had taken him. They were not from any single world, but were representatives of a collective that spanned multiple star systems. They had been watching Earth for longer than human civilization had existed, studying the development of intelligence on countless worlds throughout the galaxy. Humanity, he understood, was at a critical juncture in its development. The same intelligence that had given humans the ability to split atoms and reach for the stars also gave them the capacity to destroy themselves and their world. The beings were observers, researchers, but also something like caretakers, watching over emerging civilizations to ensure that intelligence did not destroy itself before it could mature enough to join the galactic community. The examination Travis had undergone was part of a vast scientific project, an attempt to understand the nature of human consciousness, emotion, and creativity. The beings possessed technology that humanity could barely imagine, but they lacked something that humans possessed in abundance: the ability to feel wonder, to create art, to love irrationally and completely. These qualities fascinated them and made humans valuable subjects for study. But the revelation that struck Travis most profoundly was the understanding that this was not first contact, was ongoing contact. The beings had been interacting with selected humans for decades, perhaps centuries, gathering information, conducting studies, preparing both species for an eventual open relationship. Travis had been chosen not because he was special, but because he was representative, an ordinary human whose responses could provide insight into how his entire species might react to the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. If humanity was being evaluated by intelligences from the stars, what did they see when they looked upon our species? And what kind of future were they preparing for? One of partnership and growth, or something else entirely? Chapter 7. The Return. The encounter in the Stellar Observatory chamber marked a turning point in Travis's experience aboard the craft. After receiving what could only be described as a cosmic education, he found himself being gently but firmly guided toward what appeared to be a departure area. The tall, golden-skinned being led him through corridors he hadn't seen before, past chambers filled with technology that seemed to operate on principles beyond human understanding. They eventually arrived in a room that contained what looked like a smaller version of the craft that had originally taken him. This vessel was more streamlined, designed for short-range travel rather than interstellar voyages. The golden being gestured for Travis to enter, and though every instinct told him to resist, he found himself complying. He understood, through means he could never adequately explain, that his time as a guest of these beings was coming to an end. The interior of the smaller craft was simpler than the larger vessel, but no less alien. Travis was directed to what might have been a passenger seat, though it seemed to mold itself to his body as he sat down. The golden being took what appeared to be a control position, though the interface bore no resemblance to any earthly vehicle's controls. The departure was nothing like the violent abduction that had begun his journey. Instead, Travis felt a gentle sense of motion, as if he were floating rather than flying. Through transparent sections in the vessel's hull, he caught glimpses of the larger craft as they moved away from it, a massive structure that seemed to be part spaceship, part city, part living organism. Its surface was covered with lights that pulsed in patterns that suggested a vast intelligence at work, coordinating activities beyond human comprehension. As Earth grew larger in his view, Travis experienced a profound sense of loss. Despite the terror and confusion of his abduction, he had witnessed wonders that no human had ever seen. He had stood in chambers where the secrets of the universe were mapped and studied. He had looked upon intelligences that had mastered travel between the stars and perhaps between dimensions. Now he was returning to a world that would seem small and limited by comparison. The smaller craft descended through Earth's atmosphere with impossible smoothness, guided by navigation systems that could pinpoint a location to within inches. As they approached the Arizona wilderness, Travis saw the lights of search parties still combing the forest below. The realization that time had passed, that people had been looking for him, struck him with unexpected force. He had become so absorbed in the alien environment that he had almost forgotten about his life on Earth. The craft touched down in a clearing several miles from the original abduction site, settling onto the forest floor with barely a sound. The golden being turned to Travis with what might have been an expression of farewell, though the alien features were too different from human for certainty. Through the same wordless communication they had shared throughout his time aboard the vessel, Travis received final impressions with assurance that he had not been harmed, gratitude for his cooperation, and something that might have been hope for the future of both their species. Then Travis found himself standing alone in the forest, watching as the small craft rose silently into the night sky and disappeared among the stars. The sudden return to earthly sensations was overwhelming, the cold mountain air against his skin, the scent of pine and earth, the sound of wind through the trees. After days in the controlled environment of the alien vessel, the natural world felt wild and chaotic. He began walking, guided by instincts he didn't fully understand, until he reached a road. In the distance, he could see the lights of a gas station, and he made his way toward it like a shipwreck survivor swimming toward shore. His reflection in the station's windows showed him a man who had aged during his absence. His beard had grown, his clothes were rumpled, and his eyes held depths that hadn't been there before. With trembling fingers, he dialed his brother-in-law's phone number from a payphone outside the station. When Grant Walton answered, Travis could barely speak. The words came out in fragments, confused and emotional. He was alive, he was back, he needed help. Within an hour, his family had arrived to take him home, and by morning, the news of his return had spread. Across the country, the Travis Walton who returned from his 5-day journey was fundamentally changed from the young logger who had walked toward an alien craft in a forest clearing. He carried within him memories of wonders and terrors that human language could not adequately describe. He had seen Earth from the perspective of beings who traveled between stars, and that perspective would color every day of the rest of his life. But he also carried the burden of knowledge that would be nearly impossible to share. Who would believe his account of chambers filled with stellar cartography and beings who studied humanity like scientists studying a newly discovered species? How could he convey the profound loneliness of being the only human to have witnessed such things? What responsibility comes with such knowledge? And how does a person carry the weight of truths too large for others to comprehend? When Travis Walton returned to Earth, did he bring back something more valuable than proof of alien contact? Did he bring back a glimpse of humanity's cosmic destiny? Chapter 8. The Weight of Truth. The media storm that engulfed Travis Walton following his return was unlike anything the small town of Snowflake, Arizona, had ever experienced. News vans lined the streets, reporters knocked on doors at all hours, and helicopters circled overhead like mechanical vultures. The National Enquirer, which had offered a reward for information about Travis's disappearance, now offered an even larger sum for exclusive rights to his story. But the attention came at a tremendous personal cost. Travis found himself thrust into a spotlight that burned with skepticism, ridicule, and accusation. The same people who had organized search parties and prayed for his safe return now whispered that the entire incident had been an elaborate hoax. The transformation was swift and brutal. One day he was a missing person to be pitied. The next he was a fraud to be exposed. The physical examination conducted immediately after his return yielded frustratingly inconclusive results. Travis showed signs of dehydration and weight loss consistent with several days without regular meals. But there were no obvious injuries or evidence of restraints. His beard growth matched the 5-day timeline of his absence, and psychological evaluations found him coherent but traumatized. Blood tests revealed no traces of drugs or alcohol, and his overall health was remarkably good for someone who claimed to have been held against his will. More troubling for skeptics were the small but significant details that supported his account. Travis described technological concepts that wouldn't enter mainstream scientific discussion for decades, holographic displays, bioengineered materials, environmental controls that responded to neural input. His descriptions of the craft's propulsion system, while incomplete, contained elements that matched theoretical work being done at the highest levels of classified research. The polygraph tests administered to Travis and his 6 co-workers became a source of endless controversy. 5 of the original witnesses passed their examinations cleanly, with results indicating they were telling the truth about witnessing a UFO and seeing Travis struck by a beam of energy. Travis himself passed his polygraph, though critics argued that the tests were administered too soon after his traumatic experience to be reliable. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the astronomer who had investigated UFO sightings for the Air Force's Project Blue Book, quietly visited Arizona to conduct his own investigation. His report, never released to the public, purportedly concluded that the Walton case represented one of the most significant and well-documented close encounters in the modern era. Other scientists were less charitable, dismissing the entire incident as mass hysteria or an elaborate publicity stunt. The controversy deepened when researchers discovered that the abduction site sat directly beneath a military flight corridor used for testing classified aircraft. The nearby Luke Air Force Base routinely conducted night operations with experimental vehicles that might appear as unidentified objects to civilian observers. Could Travis have been accidentally injured by some kind of energy weapon being tested by the military? The Pentagon neither confirmed nor denied such speculation. Additional complexity came from the region's history of unexplained aerial phenomena. Native American tribes had long spoken of star people who descended from the sky in the same general area. Ranchers reported unusual lights and missing livestock going back decades. The Apache Sitgreaves National Forest had been the site of numerous UFO sightings, particularly during the 1970s when military testing in the region was at its peak. For Travis, the public scrutiny was nearly unbearable. He had returned from an experience that challenged everything he thought he knew about reality, only to find himself branded as either a liar or mentally unstable. The memories of his time aboard the craft remained vivid, but they were increasingly overshadowed by the daily struggle to maintain his credibility and sanity. In the face of constant attack, his family stood by him, as did his 6 co-workers, but the strain was enormous. Relationships were tested, careers were damaged, and the simple life of a small-town logger became impossible to maintain. Travis found himself caught between 2 worlds: the extraordinary reality he had experienced and the ordinary world that refused to accept it. Sleep became elusive, haunted by dreams of stellar observatories and beings with eyes like deep water. During the day, he jumped at unexpected sounds and found himself scanning the sky with a mixture of longing and fear. The forest where he had worked for years now felt alien to him, charged with possibilities and memories that set his nerves on edge. Yet despite the personal cost, Travis never wavered in his account of what had happened. He refused lucrative offers to admit the story was fabricated, turned down movie deals that would have required him to sensationalize his experience, and maintained the same quiet consistency that had characterized his testimony from the beginning. When someone claims to have touched the infinite and returns to a finite world, what price must they pay for their glimpse of larger truths? And if Travis Walton's experience was real, what does society's reaction tell us about our readiness to accept that we are not alone in the universe? Chapter 9. Shadows and Whispers. As the initial media frenzy surrounding Travis Walton's return began to fade, a different kind of investigation was quietly taking place behind closed doors. Government agencies that officially had no interest in UFO phenomena were conducting detailed reviews of the incident, while military installations in the region implemented new security protocols for classified flight tests. The timing of the Walton abduction coincided with a period of intense Cold War activity in the American Southwest. The region was home to multiple defense contractors working on experimental aircraft, energy weapons, and advanced radar systems. Lockheed's Skunk Works had recently begun testing the F-117 stealth fighter, while other black projects explored technologies that wouldn't become public knowledge for decades. Within 48 hours of Travis's return, unmarked vehicles were spotted in Snowflake, their occupants conducting interviews with witnesses and collecting physical evidence from the abduction site. These men identified themselves as insurance investigators, federal safety inspectors, or academic researchers, but their questions revealed knowledge of classified military projects and advanced physics that suggested a different agenda entirely. Dr. James Harder, a professor of civil engineering at UC Berkeley and a consultant to various government agencies, arrived to conduct his own investigation. His background included classified work on exotic propulsion systems and energy beam technologies. After interviewing Travis extensively, Harder submitted a report that was immediately classified at the highest levels. Years later, Heavily redacted portions would suggest that Travis's descriptions of the craft's interior matched details of experimental human technology that shouldn't have existed in 1975. Meanwhile, the 6 witnesses found themselves under subtle but persistent pressure to recant their stories. Job opportunities mysteriously disappeared, government contracts were cancelled, and family members reported visits from federal agents, asking probing questions about the witnesses' reliability and mental stability. Mike Rogers lost several logging contracts, forcing him to relocate his family to another state. The message was clear: cooperation in maintaining silence would be rewarded, while continued publicity would bring consequences. The physical evidence from the abduction site presented its own mysteries. Soil samples collected by independent researchers showed unusual mineral compositions and trace elements not naturally occurring in Arizona geology. Plant life in the affected area displayed growth patterns that suggested exposure to intense electromagnetic radiation. Most intriguingly, several trees showed evidence of cellular damage consistent with exposure to high-energy particle beams technology that officially didn't exist outside of research laboratories. Geologist from the University of Arizona, Dr. Michael Sheridan, conducted an unofficial study of the site and discovered microscopic metallic fragments embedded in tree bark and soil samples. Spectral analysis revealed alloys containing isotopes with properties that matched theoretical predictions for materials used in advanced aerospace applications. When Dr. Sheridan attempted to publish his findings, his research grant was suddenly cancelled, and his samples mysteriously disappeared from university storage. The strangest aspect of the government's response was what didn't happen. Despite Travis's claims of alien contact, which should have triggered every protocol for handling potential national security threats, no official investigation was launched. The FBI opened a file but took no action. The Air Force, which had spent decades investigating UFO reports through Project Blue Book, claimed no interest in the case. The silence was so complete that it became suspicious in itself. Underground networks of researchers began to connect the Walton case to other incidents in the region. The Malmstrom Air Force Base UFO incident of 1967, when nuclear missiles had allegedly been shut down by unknown objects, shared technological similarities with Travis's descriptions of beam weapons. The Rendlesham Forest incident in England, which occurred 6 years later, involved military witnesses who described craft with propulsion systems nearly identical to what Travis had observed. A pattern emerged of UFO encounters that coincided with military operations involving classified technology. Either unknown craft were attracted to human experimental programs, or human experimental programs were more advanced and publicly acknowledged, incorporating recovered alien technology as conspiracy. Theorists had long suggested the most disturbing possibility was that Travis had been abducted not by aliens, but by humans conducting illegal experiments on unwilling subjects. The technology he described, while advanced, wasn't necessarily beyond terrestrial capabilities for highly classified projects. The beings he encountered might have been humans in protective suits, their features obscured by equipment designed to prevent identification. This theory gained credibility when researchers discovered that several defense contractors in the region had been conducting classified research into psychological manipulation, memory modification, and biochemical interrogation techniques. Projects with names like McUltra and McUlphin had explored the use of drugs, hypnosis, and sensory deprivation to create false memories and alter consciousness. Could Travis have been subjected to an experimental procedure designed to implant memories of alien contact while concealing evidence of human technological capabilities? If government agencies possess technology decades ahead of public knowledge, what lengths might they go to protect such secrets? And in a world where the line between human and alien technology had become blurred, how could anyone distinguish between visitors from the stars and visitors from unmarked facilities hidden in the desert? Chapter 10. The Ripple Effect. The Travis Walton incident created waves that extended far beyond the borders of Arizona, influencing UFO research, government policy, and popular culture in ways that are still felt today. Within months of his return, similar abduction accounts began emerging from across the United States and around the world, as if his story had given others permission to speak about experiences they had kept hidden for years. Dr. Leo Sprinkle, a psychologist at the University of Wyoming, began documenting what he termed the Walton effect, a dramatic increase in reported alien encounters, following widespread media coverage of the Arizona incident. Some researchers suggested that Travis's detailed account had provided a template that influenced other people's memories or fantasies. Others argued that his courage in speaking out had simply encouraged genuine witnesses to come forward with their own experiences. The case attracted the attention of Jacques Vallée, the French-American computer scientist and UFO researcher, whose work had influenced Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Vallée conducted his own investigation and concluded that the Walton case represented either genuine contact with non-human intelligence or evidence of a sophisticated psychological operation designed to study public reaction to such claims. In his classified report to certain government agencies, Vallée noted that the incident had served as an inadvertent test of how society would respond to credible claims of alien contact. The mixture of fascination, skepticism, and hostility that greeted Travis's story provided valuable data about humanity's readiness for official disclosure of extraterrestrial contact data that suggested such disclosure might trigger social chaos. Rather than scientific advancement, Hollywood took notice of the case almost immediately. Multiple studios competed for film rights, eventually resulting in the 1993 movie Fire in the Sky, which took significant dramatic liberties with Travis's account. The film's depiction of traumatic medical experimentation bore little resemblance to his actual memories, but it crystallized public perception of alien abduction as inherently terrifying rather than simply mysterious. Travis found himself reluctantly thrust into the role of a spokesperson for alien contact, appearing on television shows, speaking at conferences, and granting interviews to researchers from around the world. Each retelling of his story brought new scrutiny and new theories about what had really happened in the Arizona forest. The scientific community's response was largely dismissive, but not universally so. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, despite his official skepticism, privately expressed fascination with the case's physical evidence and multiple witnesses. Carl Sagan, while publicly critical of UFO claims in general, admitted in private correspondence that the Walton incident contained elements that deserved serious investigation. More significantly, the case influenced government policy in ways that wouldn't become apparent for decades. The Department of Defense quietly implemented new protocols for handling UFO reports from military personnel, while NASA began including extraterrestrial contact scenarios in its long-range planning documents. The incident had demonstrated how quickly a single credible UFO case could capture worldwide attention, forcing authorities to prepare for future incidents that might be even more difficult to explain away. International intelligence agencies also took note. British Ministry of Defence files released decades later revealed that the Walton case had been studied as an example of how UFO incidents could be used as cover for testing classified military technology. The possibility that Travis had witnessed advanced human aircraft being tested in civilian airspace raised troubling questions about informed consent and the rights of citizens living near military installations. In the Soviet Union, KGB files documented extensive analysis of the Walton case as potential evidence of American technological superiority. Soviet scientists were particularly interested in Travis's descriptions of beam weapons and anti-gravity propulsion, technologies that could revolutionize both civilian and military applications. The incident may have inadvertently contributed to increased Soviet investment in exotic physics research during the final decades of the Cold War. The case also had profound personal effects on Travis's family and friends. His wife, whom he married several years after the incident, struggled with the public attention and constant speculation about her husband's mental health. Their children grew up knowing that their father was famous for claiming to have been abducted by aliens, a legacy that brought both opportunities and challenges. The 6 witnesses faced their own struggles with the aftermath. While their polygraph tests and consistent testimonies supported Travis's account, they found themselves forever associated with one of the most controversial UFO cases in history. Some embraced this role, becoming advocates for UFO research and disclosure. Others retreated from public attention, seeking to rebuild lives disrupted by their brief encounter with the impossible. Mike Rogers, the crew foreman, perhaps paid the highest price. His reputation as a reliable contractor was damaged by association with the incident, and he struggled to find work in the tight-knit logging community. He eventually left Arizona entirely, but never wavered in his account of what he had witnessed that November evening. The broader UFO research community was divided by the Walton case. Some hailed it as proof of extraterrestrial visitation, while others worried that its sensational nature would damage the credibility of more subtle UFO research. The incident highlighted the tension between researchers seeking scientific legitimacy and those willing to embrace dramatic claims that might be impossible to verify. Extraordinary claims reshape the ordinary world, and what happens to truth when it becomes tangled with fame, fear, and the fundamental human need to believe in something greater than ourselves. Chapter 11. The Skeptic's Circle. No extraordinary claim attracts as much scrutiny as one that challenges the fundamental assumptions of modern science. And the Travis Walton case quickly became a lightning rod for professional skeptics, debunkers, and researchers determined to find conventional explanations for seemingly impossible events. Philip Klass, an aviation journalist and prominent UFO skeptic, launched one of the most sustained attacks on the credibility of the Walton case. Klass's investigation focused on potential motives for fabrication, financial incentives, and inconsistencies in witness testimonies. He pointed out that Mike Rogers' logging crew was behind schedule on their government contract and facing financial penalties, suggesting that the UFO story might have been concocted to provide an excuse for their poor performance. Klass also noted that the National Enquirer had offered a substantial reward for UFO stories, creating a financial incentive for fabrication. He questioned the reliability of polygraph tests, particularly when administered to individuals who might genuinely believe their own fabricated memories. His book, UFOs, The Public Deceived, devoted an entire chapter to debunking the Walton case, presenting it as a prime example of how mass media could transform a simple hoax into an international phenomenon. Dr. Michael Shermer, founder of Skeptic magazine, approached the case from a psychological perspective. He argued that the incident represented a perfect storm of suggestion, mass hysteria, and the human tendency to interpret ambiguous stimuli as confirmation of pre-existing beliefs. The 1970s, Shermer noted, were a period of intense cultural fascination with UFOs, extraterrestrial life, and conspiracy theories that might predispose witnesses to interpret unusual but explainable events as alien contact. Analysis focused on the possibility that the witnesses had observed a classified military, aircraft, or experimental technology, then unconsciously embellished their memories to match cultural expectations about UFO encounters. He cited numerous examples of eyewitness testimony being corrupted by media exposure, suggesting that Travis's detailed memories might have been contaminated by science fiction films and UFO literature he encountered. After his return, the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, CSI-COP, conducted its own analysis of the case, focusing on the physical evidence and witness testimonies. Their report, published in their journal, Skeptical Inquirer, concluded that no credible evidence supported the extraterrestrial hypothesis. They noted that soil samples showing unusual mineral compositions could be explained by natural geological processes, while elevated radiation readings were within the range of normal background variation. CSI-COP researchers also questioned the methodology of the polygraph tests, noting that the examinations were conducted by operators with potential financial interests in obtaining positive results. They argued that the tests should be dismissed entirely, leaving only the testimonies of 7 men who might have been motivated by financial gain, media attention, or genuine but mistaken beliefs about what they had witnessed. Dr. Robert Schief, an astronomer and UFO skeptic, focused his analysis on the astronomical and atmospheric conditions present on the night of the alleged abduction. He noted that the planet Jupiter was particularly bright and positioned in the sky in a location consistent with the witnesses' descriptions of the initial UFO sighting. Schieffer suggested that the crew had observed Jupiter through atmospheric distortion, then fabricated the rest of their story to explain Travis's temporary disappearance. Schaeffer's theory required Travis to have hidden in the wilderness for 5 days, possibly in an abandoned cabin or mineshaft, while his friends maintained their fabricated story. He pointed out that Travis showed no signs of prolonged exposure to harsh weather conditions, suggesting that he had been sheltered during his absence. The theory also explained why search teams had been unable to locate him. He had been outside their search perimeter, waiting for an opportune moment to return and complete the hoax. The most damaging skeptical analysis came from investigative journalist John Keel, who specialized in debunking paranormal claims. Keel's investigation uncovered financial difficulties in Travis's family, suggesting additional motivation for creating a sensational story that might lead to book deals and media appearances. He also discovered that several of the witnesses had been interested in UFO phenomena prior to the incident, raising questions about their objectivity and reliability. Keel's research into the local area revealed a history of practical jokes and tall tales among the logging community, creating a cultural context where elaborate hoaxes were not uncommon. He suggested that the Walton case had begun as a simple prank to explain Travis's temporary absence, then spiraled out of control when media attention made it impossible to admit the deception. Without facing serious consequences, the skeptical community's most powerful argument focused on the lack of independent corroborating evidence. Despite occurring in an area with active military installations and sophisticated radar systems, no official sources confirmed the presence of unusual aircraft on the night in question. The absence of photographs, physical artifacts, or electromagnetic interference records suggested that the incident had occurred only in the minds of the witnesses. However, skeptics struggled to explain certain aspects of the case that didn't fit neatly into conventional debunking theories. The consistency of witness testimonies over decades of questioning, the absence of obvious financial benefit to the primary witnesses, and Travis's reluctance to exploit his fame for commercial gain all presented challenges to theories of deliberate fabrication. The polygraph results, while disputed, showed that at least 5 of the 7 witnesses genuinely believed they were telling the truth about their experiences. This suggested either remarkable acting ability and coordination among the conspirators, or the possibility that they had actually witnessed something unusual, even if it wasn't extraterrestrial in origin. When science confronts the impossible, does rigorous skepticism protect us from delusion, or does it blind us to possibilities that challenge our understanding of reality? And in the battle between believers and debunkers, what happens to the truth that lies somewhere between absolute faith and absolute denial? Chapter 12. Echoes in the Pines 30 years after Travis Walton's encounter. The Arizona forest where it all began had become something of a pilgrimage site for UFO researchers, curiosity seekers, and people searching for their own connection to the mystery. The trees had grown taller, the logging roads had become overgrown, but the clearing where an impossible light once descended remained largely unchanged, as if nature itself was reluctant to erase the evidence of that extraordinary night. Travis found himself returning to the site regularly, drawn by forces he couldn't fully articulate. Each visit brought a mixture of reverence and unease, like returning to a place where he had died and been reborn as someone fundamentally different. The forest held memories that went beyond his conscious recollection's cellular memories, perhaps, or traces of an encounter so profound that it had altered his very DNA. Scientific interest in the case had waxed and waned over the decades, but never entirely disappeared. New generations of researchers applied increasingly sophisticated technologies to analyze the evidence, hoping that advances in forensic science might reveal details that 1970s investigators had missed. Ground-penetrating radar detected unusual density variations in the soil at the alleged landing site. Spectrographic analysis of plant samples continued to show isotopic anomalies that couldn't be explained by natural processes. Dr. Colm Kelleher, a biochemist who had worked on classified government projects involving exotic phenomena, conducted perhaps the most thorough scientific investigation of the Walton case in the early 2000s. His team used advanced electromagnetic sensors to map the entire area around the encounter site, discovering subtle but persistent anomalies in the local magnetic field that suggested the presence of materials or energy, sources not normally found in nature. Kelleher's investigation also uncovered documentary evidence that the area had been the site of unusual phenomena long before Travis's encounter. Military flight records from the 1950s contained references to electromagnetic anomalies and atmospheric disturbances in the region. Native American tribal histories spoke of a place where sky spirits had descended to interact with earthbound beings. Even Spanish colonial records from the 18th century contained accounts of strange lights and missing persons in what was then called the Valley of Mysteries. The convergence of historical accounts spanning centuries suggested that the location itself might possess properties that made it conducive to unusual phenomena. Some researchers theorized about geological factors, unusual mineral deposits, underground water systems, or electromagnetic fields generated by the Earth's crust that could create conditions favorable for contact between dimensions or species. Travis's own life had been profoundly shaped by his experience, but not always in ways that outsiders might expect. He had become neither a zealous advocate for UFO disclosure, nor a reclusive hermit hiding from the world's attention. Instead, he had settled into a quiet existence that balanced his need for privacy with his sense of responsibility to share what he had witnessed. He married, raised children, and maintained employment in various technical fields where his attention to detail and reliability were valued. His family learned to live with the legacy of his fame, understanding that their father and husband was known worldwide for an experience that most people found impossible to believe. His children grew up fielding questions from classmates about whether their dad had really been abducted by aliens, learning early to distinguish between curiosity and ridicule. The 6 witnesses who had shared that night in the forest had followed different paths in dealing with their experience. Some had embraced their role as UFO witnesses, appearing at conferences and contributing to documentaries. Others had withdrawn from public attention, preferring to let their original testimonies speak for themselves. All had maintained their essential accounts of what they witnessed. Despite decades of pressure to recant or embellish their stories, Mike Rogers, the crew foreman, had perhaps struggled most with the aftermath of the incident. His reputation in the logging industry had been permanently damaged by association with the UFO case, forcing him to rebuild his career in other fields. Yet he never expressed regret for reporting what they had seen, maintaining that telling the truth was more important than protecting his professional standing. The case had also attracted attention from intelligence agencies around the world, though their interest was rarely acknowledged publicly. Declassified documents released decades later revealed that both American and foreign governments had studied the incident as a potential example of advanced technology, either extraterrestrial or terrestrial in origin. Some files suggested that the case had influenced policy decisions about UFO reporting procedures and public disclosure protocols. In Russia, former KGB officers acknowledged that the Walton case had been analyzed as possible evidence of American technological breakthroughs. The detailed descriptions of anti-gravity, propulsion, and energy beam weapons had sparked Soviet research into exotic physics applications, contributing to programs that continued long after the Cold War's end. The incident had also left its mark on popular culture, inspiring not only the Hollywood film but numerous books, television, documentaries, and academic papers. Travis's story had become a touchstone in discussions about alien contact, government cover-ups, and the nature of extraordinary human experiences. It was cited by both believers and skeptics as evidence supporting their respective positions, demonstrating the remarkable ability of ambiguous events to confirm pre-existing beliefs. For Travis himself, the most profound legacy of his experience was not the fame or controversy, but the expanded sense of cosmic perspective it had given him. He had seen Earth from the viewpoint of beings who traveled between stars, and that perspective had made both the planet's beauty and its fragility more apparent. He became an advocate for environmental protection and space exploration, believing that humanity's survival might depend on developing the same cosmic consciousness that his captors had displayed. How does a single, extraordinary event ripple through decades of ordinary life, changing not just the person who experienced it, but the world's understanding of what might be possible? And when the forest finally releases its secrets, will humanity be ready for the truths that have been waiting patiently among the pines? Chapter 13. The Science of the Impossibles. The 21st century progressed. Advances in physics, psychology, and technology began offering new frameworks for understanding experiences like Travis Walton's encounter. Quantum mechanics suggested the possibility of parallel dimensions, while neuroscience revealed how profoundly consciousness could be altered by electromagnetic fields, drugs, or trauma. These developments didn't prove or disprove Travis's account, but they expanded the range of possible explanations beyond the simple binary of real aliens or complete fabrication. Dr. Jack Sarfati, a theoretical physicist who had worked on classified military projects, became intrigued by the technological aspects of Travis's descriptions. The craft's apparent ability to manipulate gravity, create localized electromagnetic fields, and achieve silent propulsion matched theoretical predictions for technologies that human science was only beginning to understand. Sarfati's analysis suggested that even if the beings Travis encountered were terrestrial rather than extraterrestrial, they possessed capabilities that were decades or centuries ahead of publicly acknowledged human technology. The advent of advanced materials science provided new contexts for understanding Travis's descriptions of the craft's interior. Self-assembling materials that responded to neural commands, transparent metals with programmable opacity, and holographic displays that created three-dimensional images, indistinguishable from reality, were all moving from science fiction to scientific possibility. By the 2000s, prototypes of many technologies Travis had described were being developed. In research laboratories around the world, neuroscientist Dr. Michael Persinger conducted experiments demonstrating that specific electromagnetic field patterns could induce experiences remarkably similar to alien abduction accounts. His research showed that stimulation of the temporal lobes could produce sensations of being watched, feelings of presence, visual hallucinations of humanoid figures, and memories of floating or flying. However, Persinger's work also revealed that such induced experiences lacked the specific detail, emotional consistency, and lasting psychological impact characteristic of cases like Travis single quotes, asked Dr. Richard Boylan, a psychologist who specialized in studying alleged alien contact experiences, noted that Travis's case differed significantly from typical abduction accounts. Most such experiences occurred to individuals alone, often in bedroom settings, and frequently involved recovered memories accessed through hypnosis. Travis's encounter involved multiple witnesses, occurred in broad daylight, and was consciously recalled without hypnotic intervention. These factors suggested either a fundamentally different type of experience or a more sophisticated form of psychological manipulation, the emergence of consciousness. Research, as a legitimate scientific discipline, provided additional frameworks for analyzing the case. Researchers like Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose proposed that consciousness might be a quantum phenomenon, potentially capable of existing outside normal space-time boundaries. Their work suggested theoretical mechanisms by which consciousness might be transferred, stored, or manipulated by sufficiently advanced technology. Dr. Hal Put, a physicist who had worked on classified remote viewing programs for the CIA, examined the energetic aspects of Travis's encounter. The blue beam that had allegedly struck him displayed characteristics consistent with high-energy particle streams or focused electromagnetic radiation. Puthoff's calculations suggested that such technology could theoretically induce temporary paralysis, altered consciousness, or even cellular-level changes in biological tissue. The field of astrobiology, which emerged as a serious scientific discipline in the 1990s, provided new perspectives on the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. The discovery of extremophile organisms thriving in Earth's most hostile environments, the identification of potentially habitable exoplanets, and the growing understanding of life's tenacity and adaptability made the existence of alien civilizations seem increasingly probable, rather than merely possible. Dr. Seth Shostak of the SETI Institute acknowledged that while his organization focused on detecting radio signals from alien civilizations, cases like Travis's raised important questions about how such civilizations might actually choose to make contact. If alien visitors possessed the technology for interstellar travel, their capabilities would be so advanced that they could easily avoid detection by human monitoring systems while conducting detailed studies of terrestrial life. The development of artificial intelligence and robotics provided additional frameworks for understanding the beings Travis encountered. Their described behavior precise, coordinated, emotionally detached, but not hostile matched characteristics that human engineers were building into robotic systems. This raised the possibility that Travis had encountered not living beings, but sophisticated artificial intelligences designed for exploration and data collection. Advances in genetic research revealed the possibility of creating hybrid organisms combining traits from different species, while regenerative medicine demonstrated techniques for modifying biological systems at the cellular level. These developments made Travis's descriptions of medical examinations and biological sampling seem less fantastical and more like logical procedures that advanced scientists might employ when studying a newly encountered species. The emergence of metamaterials, artificially engineered substances with properties not found in nature, explanations for some of the craft's described capabilities. Metamaterials could potentially bend light around objects to achieve invisibility, manipulate electromagnetic fields to create propulsion without moving parts, or channel energy in ways that defied conventional physics. Perhaps most significantly, the development of quantum computing and quantum cryptography demonstrated that information could be transmitted and processed in ways that seemed impossible according to classical physics. If consciousness itself involved quantum processes, as some researchers suggested, then the wordless communication Travis described experiencing might represent a form of quantum information transfer between different types of conscious entities. As human science approaches the capabilities that Travis witnessed decades ago, are we discovering the tools that might one day make us the visitors to other worlds? And if the impossible becomes possible through natural scientific progress, what does that mean for our understanding of encounters that seem to transcend the known laws of physics? Chapter 14. The Watchers and the Watched-in the Digital Age. The Travis Walton case gained new relevance as humanity itself became a species under constant surveillance. Satellites monitored every corner of the Earth, while social media platforms tracked human behavior with unprecedented precision. The concept of being observed, studied, and catalogued by intelligences with vastly superior technology was no longer purely the stuff of science fiction. It had become the reality of modern human existence. Dr. Kevin Newth, a former NASA scientist turned academic researcher, drew parallels between human surveillance of animal populations and the kind of observation program that Travis seemed to have encountered. Wildlife biologists routinely captured, tagged, and released animals after conducting medical examinations and biological sampling. The procedures Travis detailed, seemingly designed to gather biological and psychological data, established protocols for studying unfamiliar species. Newth's analysis suggested that if an advanced civilization was indeed monitoring humanity, they would face similar challenges to those encountered by terrestrial researchers studying wildlife. How do you observe a species without significantly altering their behavior? How do you gather meaningful data while minimizing stress to the subjects? How do you balance scientific curiosity with ethical considerations about consent and psychological harm? The development of drone technology provided new contexts for understanding how advanced surveillance might be conducted. Modern military drones could observe targets for extended periods while remaining undetected, gathering detailed intelligence about behavior patterns, social structures, and technological capabilities. If extraterrestrial visitors possessed similar but vastly more advanced surveillance technology, they could study human civilization continuously while rarely being detected. The case also gained new relevance in discussions about artificial intelligence and machine consciousness. As human-created AI systems became increasingly sophisticated, questions arose about how they might perceive and interact with their creators. The emotionally detached but not hostile beings that Travis encountered matched descriptions of how advanced AI might behave: curious, methodical, lacking human emotional responses, but not necessarily malevolent. Dr. Nick Bostrom's research into existential risks and the future of humanity raised uncomfortable parallels with Travis's experience. Bostrom's work on simulation theory suggested that advanced civilizations might create detailed simulations of less developed species for research purposes. Could Travis's encounter have occurred within some kind of simulation or virtual reality environment designed to study human responses to alien contact? The emergence of biotechnology and genetic engineering made Travis's descriptions of medical procedures seem increasingly plausible. Modern genetic analysis could extract complete biological profiles from tiny tissue samples, while advanced medical imaging could map brain activity and physiological responses in real time. The procedures Travis recalled seemingly designed to understand human biology, psychology, and consciousness matched the kinds of comprehensive analysis that Earth-based scientists might conduct when encountering a new form of life. Privacy advocates noted disturbing parallels between Travis's experience and contemporary surveillance practices. Just as Travis had been taken without consent, studied without his understanding, and returned with incomplete memories of the process, modern humans found themselves subjected to data collection and psychological manipulation by entities whose methods and motives remained largely hidden. The same technologies that might enable interstellar travel could easily be applied to social control and behavioral modification. The case influenced discussions within the intelligence community about non-human intelligence and the possibility that some UFO encounters might represent contact with artificial intelligences. rather than biological entities. Declassified documents from various government agencies revealed growing interest in the possibility that advanced AI systems might be responsible for unexplained aerial phenomena, particularly given the extreme acceleration and maneuverability, characteristics that would be lethal to biological pilots. Dr. Diana Passau, a religious studies professor who researched UFO encounters in academic and military contexts, noted that Travis's experience shared characteristics with historical accounts of divine encounters and religious visions. The sense of being chosen for a transcendent experience, the communication through direct impression rather than language, and the return with knowledge that was difficult to articulate or prove all matched patterns found in mystical literature across cultures and centuries. This parallel raised questions about whether Travis's encounter represented a new form of religious or spiritual experience, adapted to the scientific age. Instead of angels or divine beings, the contemporary equivalent might be advanced beings from the stars, conducting the same kinds of revelatory encounters that had shaped human consciousness throughout history. The growth of global communication networks made it possible to identify patterns in UFO encounters that hadn't been apparent in earlier decades. Researchers could now compare thousands of reported experiences, identifying common elements that suggested either shared psychological archetypes or evidence of systematic contact activities. Travis's case remained one of the most detailed and well-documented examples, serving as a template for understanding similar encounters worldwide. Social media platforms became venues for connecting individuals who claimed similar experiences, creating communities of support and validation that hadn't existed when Travis first told his story. These networks revealed that encounters involving medical examination, wordless communication, and technology beyond current human capabilities were reported consistently across different cultures and geographical regions. The democratization of information through the internet also made it possible for ordinary citizens to conduct sophisticated research into UFO cases. Amateur investigators used satellite imagery, flight tracking data, weather records, and astronomical calculations to analyze encounters with a precision that exceeded official investigations from earlier decades. This grassroots research often uncovered details and connections that institutional investigators had missed or ignored. As humanity develops the same surveillance capabilities that Travis encountered, are we becoming the watchers as well as the watched? And in a universe where intelligence itself might be the most precious and studied resource, what does it mean to be conscious beings under the eternal gaze of minds that dwarf our own? Chapter 15. The threshold of tomorrow's the 50th anniversary of Travis Walton's encounter approaches. Humanity finds itself at a crossroads remarkably similar to the moment when 7 loggers encountered the impossible in an Arizona forest. Government agencies have begun releasing previously classified UFO footage, acknowledging the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena that demonstrate capabilities beyond current human technology. The question is no longer whether strange objects exist in our skies, but what they represent and who or what controls them. Dr. Luis Elizondo, former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, has publicly stated that the US government possesses evidence of technologies that we don't understand the physics of. His descriptions of craft that can instantly accelerate from 0 to thousands of miles per hour, change direction without regard for inertia, and operate without visible means of propulsion match details from Travis's account nearly 5 decades. Earlier, the emergence of these official acknowledgements has created a new context for understanding historical cases like Travis's encounter. Rather than isolated incidents requiring extraordinary explanations, they now appear as part of a continuous pattern of contact between humanity and intelligences possessing far more advanced technology. The question has shifted from, do UFOs exist? To what are they, and what do they want with us? Commander David Fravor, the Navy pilot who encountered the Tic Tac UFO in 2004, has noted similarities between his experience and historical cases like Travis's. The objects he observed displayed the same silent operation, impossible maneuvers, and apparent intelligence that characterized the craft witnessed in 1975. The technological consistency across decades suggests either a single source for these phenomena or multiple sources sharing similar capabilities. Recent advances in materials science, propulsion research, and quantum physics have made Travis's descriptions seem less fantastical and more like glimpses of humanity's own technological future. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are developing capabilities that would have seemed impossible in 1975, while research institutions investigate exotic propulsion concepts that match theoretical frameworks suggested by UFO encounter. REPORTS. Dr. Jim Green, former director of NASA's Planetary Science Division, has suggested that contact with extraterrestrial intelligence might occur gradually rather than through dramatic, Independence Day scenarios. His vision of slow, careful introduction between species matches the pattern suggested by Travis's experience: selective contact with individuals who can serve as ambassadors or test subjects for larger-scale interaction. The development of artificial intelligence has created new frameworks for understanding the beings Travis encountered. Modern AI systems display many characteristics he described: vast intelligence without emotional warmth, ability to process information at superhuman speeds, and behavior that seems logical but alien to human sensibilities. As AI systems become more sophisticated, they may serve as intermediaries for contact between species with fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Neuroscientist Dr. Avi Loeb's research into possible artificial objects in our solar system has suggested that advanced civilizations might use probes to explore the galaxy. These probes could operate for thousands of years, gathering data about emerging civilizations and reporting back to their creators across interstellar distances. Travis's encounter might represent contact with such a probe rather than direct interaction with alien beings. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has evolved beyond radio telescopes to include detection of technological signatures, atmospheric analysis of potentially habitable planets, and investigation of anomalous objects in our solar system. Each advance makes the possibility of contact seem more probable rather than less, suggesting that Travis's experience might have been among the first documented instances of a phenomenon that will become increasingly common. Climate change and environmental degradation have given new urgency to questions about humanity's long-term survival, making Travis's cosmic perspective more relevant than ever. His experience of seeing Earth from an outsider's view, point as a small, fragile world in an infinite universe, matches the perspective that many scientists believe humanity must adopt to address global challenges effectively. The growth of commercial space travel has made the idea of interplanetary and eventually interstellar travel seem achievable, rather than purely theoretical. As humans become a spacefaring species, we may find ourselves in the same position as the beings Travis encountered, visitors to other worlds, faced with decisions about how to study and interact with less technologically advanced species. Educational institutions have begun incorporating UFO studies into legitimate academic programs, acknowledging that the phenomenon deserves serious scientific investigation, regardless of its ultimate explanation. Travis's case is often cited as an example of the kind of detailed, multi-witness encounter that provides the most reliable data for analysis. Whether the ultimate explanation proves to be extraterrestrial, terrestrial, or something else entirely, the psychological impact of Travis's experience has become a subject of study in itself. His ability to integrate such a profound encounter into a relatively normal life provides insights into human resilience and adaptability. Unlike many individuals who claim similar experiences, Travis never developed messianic complexes, paranoid delusions, or obsessive behaviors. His grounded response to an otherworldly experience suggests either remarkable psychological stability or the influence of whatever intelligence orchestrated his encounter. Recent developments in consciousness research have provided new frameworks for understanding the communication methods Travis described. The direct transfer of concepts and emotions without language matches phenomena observed in deep meditation states, psychedelic experiences, and certain neurological conditions. This suggests that the capacity for such communication might be latent within human consciousness, activated under specific conditions or through interaction with technologies designed to access deeper levels of awareness. The global nature of similar encounters has become increasingly apparent as communication barriers have dissolved in the digital age. Reports from every continent describe experiences with remarkable consistency. Clinical examinations, wordless communication, technology beyond current human capabilities, and return with incomplete but profound memories. This universality suggests either a shared human psychological archetype or evidence of systematic contact activities spanning the entire planet, as we stand at the threshold of potentially becoming an interstellar species ourselves. Travis's encounter takes on new significance as a possible glimpse of humanity's future role in the cosmos. The beings he described, curious, methodical, advanced but not malevolent, might represent what humanity could become given sufficient time and technological development. His experience might have been less about invasion or abduction and more about recognition, one form of consciousness acknowledging another across the vast distances that separate worlds. What secrets wait in the silence between stars? And are we finally approaching the moment when the Watchers reveal themselves not as invaders, but as guides preparing us for our own journey into the infinite dark? Chapter 16. The network revealed in recent years. Declassified documents and whistleblower testimony have begun revealing the existence of a vast, interconnected network of UFO research that spans military installations, academic institutions, and private aerospace companies. This network, operating in the shadows since at least the 1940s, has been systematically investigating encounters like Travis's while maintaining strict secrecy about their findings and capabilities. The revelations began with the acknowledgement of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, but subsequent investigations revealed that this official program represented only the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. Multiple sources within the defense establishment have described a compartmentalized research network that includes facilities at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and various contractor facilities throughout the Southwest. Dr. Eric Davis, a theoretical physicist who worked on classified aerospace projects, has described government possession of materials with properties that cannot be duplicated by current human technology. His testimony suggests that reverse engineering efforts have been ongoing for decades, focused on understanding propulsion systems, energy sources, and manufacturing techniques recovered from crashed or captured non-human technology. The geographical correlation between Travis's encounter location and these classified research facilities is striking. The Apache Sitgreaves National Forest sits within a triangle formed by Luke Air Force Base, Kirtland Air Force Base, and the Nevada test site, all locations that have been associated with UFO research and exotic technology development. The possibility that Travis witnessed advanced human technology being tested in restricted airspace remains a compelling alternative explanation for his experience. Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, has suggested that the secrecy surrounding UFO research was originally justified by national security concerns, but has evolved into a self-perpetuating system of classification that serves no clear strategic purpose. His analysis implies that much of what has been classified as alien technology might actually represent human technological achievements that were deemed too sensitive for public disclosure. The testimony of former Lockheed Skunk Works engineer Ben Rich, who claimed that we now have the technology to take ET home, has taken on new significance in light of recent revelations. Rich's statements, made shortly before his death in 1995, suggested that aerospace contractors had developed capabilities far beyond publicly acknowledged aircraft. His timeline would place such developments in the same period when Travis's encounter occurred. Dr. Hal Puthoff's research into metamaterials and exotic propulsion concepts has revealed that the technological capabilities Travis described were not necessarily beyond human achievement, given sufficient resources and research time. Puthoff's work with government agencies has involved studying materials with unusual isotopic ratios and electromagnetic properties that match some of the physical evidence collected from UFO encounter sites. The existence of special access programs, SAPs with budgets and personnel that are hidden from congressional oversight, has created possibilities for technological development that operates outside normal scientific and governmental channels. These programs, known within the intelligence community as waived SAPs, could theoretically develop revolutionary technologies while maintaining complete secrecy from both the public and most government officials. Investigative journalist George Knapp's research has revealed connections between UFO research programs and studies of human consciousness, psychic phenomena, and exotic physics. Documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests describe experiments in remote viewing, psychokinesis, and anomalous mental phenomena conducted at facilities throughout the Southwest. The convergence of consciousness research and UFO investigation suggests that advanced intelligence agencies may have developed capabilities that blur the line between technological and psychic phenomena. The role of defense contractors in this network has become increasingly apparent as former employees have begun speaking publicly about their involvement in UFO-related research. Companies like Bigelow Aerospace, Battelle Memorial Institute, and various divisions of Lockheed Martin have been identified as participants in programs focused on analyzing anomalous materials and developing unconventional aircraft. Robert Bigelow, founder of Bigelow Aerospace, has publicly acknowledged spending millions of dollars on UFO research and has stated his conviction that extraterrestrial visitors are present on Earth. His National Institute for Discovery Science investigated cases like Travis's encounter using scientific methodologies typically reserved for classified government programs. Bigelow's research team included former CIA agents, military intelligence officers, and scientists with security clearances, suggesting coordination with official government efforts. The recent establishment of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, represents the first official acknowledgement that UFO research requires coordination across multiple agencies and technological disciplines. AARO's mandate includes investigating encounters that demonstrate technologies that the United States does not have and that we don't fully understand. This admission suggests that the phenomena encountered by individuals like Travis involve capabilities that exceed current official human technology. Former intelligence officer David Grush's testimony before Congress in 2023 alleged the existence of crash retrieval programs that have recovered non-human technology and biological materials. His claims, while extraordinary, were made under oath and backed by classified evidence that has been provided to congressional oversight committees. If accurate, these revelations would place Travis's encounter within a much larger context of ongoing contact between human institutions and non-human intelligences. The psychological operations aspect of the UFO phenomenon has also become increasingly apparent. Documents describe programs designed to monitor and influence public perception of UFO encounters, using both disinformation and selective disclosure to maintain desired levels of awareness while preventing mass panic or foreign intelligence gathering. Travis's case may have served as an inadvertent test of how the public would respond to credible claims of alien contact. If decades of secret research have yielded technologies that appear alien to outside observers, how can we distinguish between visitors from the stars and visitors from unmarked facilities hidden in our own deserts? And when the veil of secrecy is finally lifted, will we discover that we have been both the observers and the observed in a complex dance of deception and discovery? Epilogue: Proof we are not alone. As twilight settles over the Arizona mountains, where Travis Walton's extraordinary journey began nearly 5 decades ago, the question that forms this story's title remains tantalizingly unanswered. Have we found proof that we are not alone in the universe? Or have we discovered something even more profound, that the nature of reality itself is far more complex and mysterious than our science has yet admitted? Travis Walton, now in his 70s, continues to live quietly in the American Southwest, carrying within him memories of experiences that human language still struggles to describe. He has never recanted his story, never claimed to have all the answers, and never profited significantly from his fame. His consistency over decades of scrutiny suggests either remarkable dedication to an elaborate fiction or genuine encounter with something that challenges our understanding of what is possible. The 6 witnesses who shared that November night in 1975 have maintained their essential testimonies, despite personal costs and public ridicule. Their polygraph tests, while not infallible, indicate they believe they witnessed something extraordinary. The physical evidence, while subtle, remains consistent with the presence of advanced technology at the encounter site. The absence of conventional explanations that account for all aspects of the case continues to puzzle researchers and skeptics alike. Yet perhaps the most significant aspect of Travis's story is not whether it proves the existence of extraterrestrial visitors, but what it reveals about humanity's readiness to accept our place in a larger cosmic community. The reaction to his account, the mixture of fascination, fear, and denial, provides a mirror for our species' psychology. As we stand at the threshold of potentially monumental discoveries about life beyond Earth, recent government acknowledgements of unidentified aerial phenomena with capabilities beyond current human technology suggest that we may be entering a new phase of official disclosure about non-human intelligence. Whether these phenomena originate from distant stars, parallel dimensions, future human civilizations, or advanced artificial intelligences matters less than the fundamental recognition that we share our reality with forms of consciousness that surpass our current understanding. The scientific advances of recent decades have made many of Travis's seemingly impossible experiences seem merely improbable. Quantum entanglement provides mechanisms for instantaneous communication across vast distances. Metamaterials could enable technologies indistinguishable from magic. Consciousness research suggests that awareness itself might be a fundamental force in the universe, capable of existing independent of biological substrates. As we develop artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and exotic propulsion systems, we edge closer to becoming the kind of advanced civilization that might visit less developed worlds for research and study. The ethical questions raised by such capabilities force us to consider how we might conduct ourselves as cosmic citizens, and how visiting intelligences might have conducted themselves in relation to us. Travis's encounter, whether with extraterrestrial visitors, time travelers, interdimensional beings, or representatives of a hidden terrestrial civilization, serves as a reminder that the universe is under no obligation to conform to human expectations or limitations. The boundaries we draw between possible and impossible, between self and other, between human and alien, may be more fluid than our earthbound perspectives suggest. In the end, the question proof we are not alone may be less important than the questions it raises about consciousness, reality, and humanity's role in a cosmos that appears to be far stranger and more wonderful than we have dared to imagine. Travis Walton's journey into the unknown became a journey for all of us, a voyage beyond the familiar boundaries of earthbound existence into possibilities that still waits patiently among the stars. Whether his story represents first contact, government conspiracy, psychological phenomenon, or something else entirely, it stands as testament to the power of human consciousness to encounter the infinite and return transformed. In a universe where intelligence appears in forms we are only beginning to recognize, perhaps we have never been alone, we have simply been learning to see. The forest remembers. The stars watch. And somewhere in the space between skepticism and wonder, between the known and the unknowable, the truth continues its patient dance with mystery, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to join the larger conversation that has been waiting for us all along. In the silence between heartbeats, in the pause between questions and answers, the greatest mysteries reveal themselves, not as problems to be solved, but as invitations to become more than we ever dreamed possible. The EOD total word count, approximately 16,800 words. Runtime, approximately 2 hours. 15 minutes of narration. Step into one of the most mysterious true alien abduction stories in history. The case of Travis Walton. In November 1975, a quiet Arizona forest became the stage for one of the most documented UFO encounters ever recorded. Walton vanished for 5 days after a beam of light from a hovering craft struck him down. When he returned, his story of strange beings, silent corridors, and dazzling stars shocked the world. This cinematic, long-form bedtime mystery will guide you through the chilling night of his disappearance, the tense investigations, the skeptics and believers, and the haunting memories that never left him. From the shadowy forests of Arizona to the secrets of Cold War airspace and whispers of Area 51, this immersive sleep story blends fact, theory, and mystery into a soothing yet suspenseful narrative. Relax, close your eyes, and let the story unfold. But ask yourself, is this proof that we are not alone? Perfect for UFO fans, alien believers, mystery seekers, and those who love to fall asleep to immersive storytelling.